Alrighty, so this is Decent We the People News one more time. Okay? I'm not an attorney, not giving legal advice. This is educational purposes only. No more, no less. Okay? Anything I say or do is only hearsay. Okay? We always want to kind of keep an eye out. So never look straight forward. Always look around you to be able to protect yourself by any means necessary. Sometimes, people, we got to think outside the box. Let me try to adjust this a little bit more. Okay? Let's proceed forward before we get behind schedule like I'm already am.
They weren't free to commit crimes. The only way you could think that the relationship is causal is if you think it's the same set of criminals repeatedly committing all of the crimes, and we caught all of them. There are no new criminals. We apparently won the war on crime. But as soon as you realize that the population of the US has grown at the same rate throughout this entire period, it's clear that something else was going on. The United States isn't the only country with crime. We're not the only country whose crime rate peaked in the 90s and then dropped off. We're also not the only country with drugs. We are the only country whose prison population grew like this, though. Why?
Our residential is affluent, and we're very proud of that. We're very proud of where we live.
Always something.
Only. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Save thousands on hot tubs and swim spas. Hundreds in stock. Training's welcome. We'll even
I am not a racist. But some people make the argument that it's our country's unique racial composition and that some people are just naturally more inclined to be criminals. And those people are wrong. We're not the only country with a diverse population and long history of racial segregation. So what really happened? Why did the crime rate spike in the 90s and then drop as the prison population grew? Well, I hope by now that you can see that the crime rate never actually grew. We just expanded our definition of what constitutes a crime and what constitutes a jailable offense. We've talked a lot about the drug war in this video, but this holds true for all crime. It was legal to rape your wife until the 90s. There was no drinking age until the 70s. We just made more things illegal. The inflated crime rate led to a drastic expansion in the number of police on the streets. More cops looking for crime results in more found crime. The war on drugs and broader war on crime jailed everyone that they could get away with before public opinion turned, which ended overt racial profiling practices like stop and frisk. This led to an apparent drop in the crime rate. But there were also policies which set unreasonably high bail, keeping people in jail while they await trial, known as preventive detention. Almost a quarter of all incarcerated people in the US have yet to be convicted of any crime. The establishment of drug courts in the 90s prioritized treatment over prison, which helped to level the incarceration rate. And thanks to mandatory minimums and 3 strikes laws, many people convicted during the war on drugs are still serving excessively long sentences. These harsh punishments and the number of police on the street rose throughout the drug war, but especially under Clinton as part of the 1994 crime bill.
I remind you that last year we passed a very tough crime bill. Longer sentences, 3 strikes and you're out, almost 60 new capital punishment offenses, more prisons, more prevention, 100,000 more police.
All of these variables interacted with each other at different times to produce an overall drop in crime while growing the prison population. It's a complicated answer, made even more complicated by the fact that some minority communities wanted an increased police presence to deal with the perceived crime and drug problem. But we're the only country that punishes drug use like this. We're also the only country with a militarized civilian police force that still drives around in armored rescue vehicles. This is a mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle, or MRAP. It gets about 3 miles to the gallon and weighs at least 15 tons. Since that's spread across 4 wheels instead of 18, it's too heavy for most bridges in the United States. It also has an incredibly high rollover risk. We use these as our lead convoy vehicle in Iraq, which was a war zone. This is a town 20 miles outside of Atlanta in peacetime America. How on earth did they get one of these? During the Tough on Crime 90s, in response to the artificially inflated crime rate and the high-profile emergency situations we discussed earlier, Clinton created the 1033 program, otherwise known as the Law Enforcement Support Office of the Defense Logistics Agency. Early versions of it started when crime peaked in 91, but it became a permanent fixture in 1997. and allowed surplus military equipment, weapons, and vehicles to be transferred to police departments for the purpose of drug enforcement, and later counterterrorism, which is even more vague. Basically, the federal government gave local law enforcement store credit on any repurposed military equipment as long as they used it to enforce federal policy, including assault weapons, bayonets, grenade launchers, and eventually MRAPs. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. With everything we've discussed, the increase in police presence, the shift and expansion of policy, and the addition of military equipment, is anyone really surprised at the current state of things? And now we all have cameras, so there's no denying it. The police have been approaching every situation as if they're in a war zone. Because
Sit and think about this for a minute, people. There's an auditor in Arizona that got on probation, and he'd gone and agreed to all this, right? But you know how he broke probation? By going to his family's house, and they had a fireplace and had a fire poker, and they called that a weapon, and he broke probation. So they put him back in jail. So if you don't think they don't make up things, they absolutely positively do.
that's what they're trained to do. I'm not going to get into police training because some more news made a video diving into that aspect specifically. I recommend checking it out, especially if you're a veteran like me. I'm not going to show any of the numerous videos of police violence here, but as a veteran, I am horrified by what I'm seeing. A few days ago, I was reading a Reddit thread talking about recent events, and a discussion between veterans really stuck with me.
It suggests to me that police officers too often want the power and prestige of military members without any of the requisite training or responsibilities.
If I, as an American convoy security gunner in Iraq, were to shoot someone who was running away, even if they were armed and might pose a threat later, I would be in prison. If I were lucky, it would be an American prison. While we were deployed, we had to memorize the rules of engagement and a series of steps known as escalation of force. Escalation of force step 1, visual. This can be flashing lights, a sign, hand waving, any visual method of getting someone's attention. Step 2, sound. Whether it's a siren or verbal command, any auditory way of getting someone's attention. Step 3, non-lethal. As a gunner in Iraq, this meant a flare or tracer rounds shot off to the side, but this can also mean a taser or mace. All of these can be lethal, but that's not their intended effect. Step 4, warning shot. One shot down at the ground. Not into the air, gravity still works on bullets, don't be stupid. Step 5, kill shot. Again, one shot. You don't empty your magazine into someone. That's a literal war crime. It's against the Geneva Convention. Now, looking at this list and thinking of all the police shootings you've seen, how many of these steps do they even attempt? As a soldier in an active war zone, if you couldn't demonstrate that you went through this list step by step, you went to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Unlike the police, there is no qualified immunity or soldiers union to protect your job if you mess up and kill someone. And no generous severance package either. If you're kicked out of the military, you're done. You have to check that box on every job application for the rest of your life. You even lose your Second Amendment rights. If you want to dress up and play Army and have the same prestige and respect as the military, you apparently need real stakes. The other option is to take all of your new toys away and probably disarm you, which I know is a tough sell. But we are currently asking the police to respond to every situation with a hammer. There is no reason why someone with a gun needs to do a VIN inspection. There's no reason why armed people need to show up at your house to do a wellness check because you haven't shown up to work in a few days. According to a recent New York Times article, police only spend 4% of their time responding to violent crime. And if you ask me, those are the only times they should have a gun. Disarming the police lowers the danger level of literally every interaction, including traffic stops. Other countries have done it, we can too. But if you're still resistant, another option exists, which you've undoubtedly heard in recent weeks. Defund the police. That doesn't mean drop their funding to zero. It just means shift the majority of that funding to some new agency that handles society's non-violent problems. I don't care what you call it, a community response agency. I would much rather have an unarmed community responder handle a mental health crisis or noise complaint. Those who do not learn from their history should go to curiositystream.com/knowingbetter. CuriosityStream is a subscription streaming service that offers thousands of documentaries and nonfiction titles that you can access across multiple platforms. Learn more about the founding of the United States in this documentary on George Washington, Father of a Nation. From the Declaration of Independence to the writing of the Constitution, get a better idea of what they originally intended. If you sign up using the link below, you'll also get access to Nebula, a streaming service built by fellow YouTubers to allow us to create without oppressive oversight, just as the Founding Fathers intended. Check it out by also signing up for CuriosityStream. If you use the promo code KnowingBetter at checkout, you'll get the first month for free. And remember, the soldiers are not what they seem. The Founding Fathers would be horrified if they saw the current state of policing in our country. How do I know that? The Second Amendment created an armed citizenry for the purposes of defense and even citizen policing. That was the original intent. The Third Amendment talks about the housing of troops in people's homes, which may seem like an antiquated line from a bygone era. But the original complaint in the Declaration of Independence looks more relevant to the present day than ever.
For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states.
If the Boston Massacre were to occur today, they would describe it as a police shooting of unarmed protesters. The rest of the Bill of Rights is about the justice system. No unreasonable search and seizure, speedy trials by jury, and no excessive bail. Things that we've also let erode over time. It makes no sense for there to be one random amendment about the quartering of troops right in the middle of this list, unless the concept of the police didn't exist yet. When the framers of the Constitution wrote about soldiers living amongst us, they were trying to prevent a militarized police state, which, look around. The decision to militarize the police and get tough on crime didn't happen all at once. It was incremental. So no single solution will solve this problem. That's compounded by the fact that there are almost 18,000 separate police departments in the United States and no national standards. It's going to take a lot of work to reframe our understanding of crime and the role of the police. But it is possible because now you know better. I'd like to give a shout out to my newest Golden Fork patrons, Akat and Luke. If you'd like to add your name to this list of community responders, head on over to patreon.com/knowingbetter, or for a one-time donation, paypal.me/knowingbetter. Don't forget to detain that subscribe button or the join button if you're feeling especially frisky. Check out the merch at knowingbetter.tv, follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and join us on the subreddit.
Alrighty.
This list, unless the
There we go, people. Diesel with People News. Remember, always, never look straight forward. Just look around you. So that way you can better inform and better protect yourself and your family. Diesel with the People News. Till next time. Bye, y'all.